So speaking of history, we've only ever made one promo video, and we're up for a new one. And I wasn't going to show this last time, but people said, yeah, show it, show it. So I'm going to show you our 2-minute promo video. Can you see the screen? I imagine you can. Oh, wait, can you hear the screen? I forgot to share screen with sound. Let me try that again. Share sound. Okay, take two.
Everywhere in the world, many protected area plans pile up unimplemented, yet planners continue to churn out the same kind of plan again and again. It's not a technical or a resource problem. There are many good technical people and resources for planning. It's an idea problem. But changing ideas is very difficult because many people dedicate their reputations, their careers, and their lives to the old idea. Physicist Max Planck suggested that we simply wait for the old idea people to die. But we don't have that time. We need to protect our heritage now, which is why the PUP Consortium does a four-pronged approach. We have a big new idea to make the old idea obsolete. The old idea is basically to treat plans as if they were scientific studies, where the scientists have all the power to change and exclude almost everybody else. The new idea, what we call holistic planning, is to bring all these stakeholders together so they feel ownership for the plan, so they plan continuously, so the plan never goes out of date. But the new idea people are always in the minority, so we need to embrace those people in a democratic grassroots approach. And to convince the old idea people about the new ideas, we're going to have set up model sites where holistic planning is done successfully, do quality research and publishing, and train the new people with the new idea so they don't build their lives on an old idea, and disseminate the new idea through training centers on almost every continent and a global lessons learned center, so that we can have eventually a tipping point, much like a stuck door that suddenly opens. Much like when a government declares that its protected areas will be managed through holistic planning. Much like when the big guys in the field finally open their door to the new idea. In this wild world where we live, the old idea just doesn't work, which is why we invite you to join the PUP Global Heritage Consortium.
I think the one thing to rescue from that old idea video is that even back then we were talking about a lessons learned center, which has kind of evolved into the collaboratory today. But anyway, continuing along the idea of history, I want to tell you a little bit about the founding of PUP, our founding story. And Liz is probably the most familiar because this is the very first page of chapter 1 of our book, The Future Has Other Plans. So if you haven't read it, this should be new. In any event, here it goes. The president of Pico Bonito National Park in Honduras, Fito Steiner, approached John Cole with a question. We have $5,000 from the Angelica Foundation to make a public use plan for the park. Do you know anyone who could help us do it? At the time, John, a 28-year-old conservationist working with a small group called Rare Center for Tropical Conservation, based in Arlington, Virginia. The organization had hired him to train local bilingual nature guides around national parks in Honduras. John had known Fito for 2 years, and such a request hardly seemed out of order. Quote, I don't, but we can certainly look around, he replied. So John and Fito checked contacts, searched the literature, and surfed what existed of the internet at that time, which was about 1999. Through their informal survey, they glimpsed the park planning landscape across Latin America. Instead of finding a consultant or methodology they could recommend, however, they found a landscape strewn with dead and dying protected area plans, partially or totally unimplemented, populating office shelves under dusty stacks of long-lost documents and virtually banned to floppy disks in computer hard drives. So you remember floppy disks. John summed up his findings. I'm sorry, Fito, there's nothing out there we can recommend. Since Rare specialized in ecotourism development and facilitated grassroots conservation, he continued, but maybe we can help Pico Bonito write its public use plan. I'm sure we could come up with a methodology at least as good as anything out there. When John broached his idea to his boss, Brett Jenks, Brett replied, "Fine, but I don't want another plan lying on a shelf. If you're going to do this, we need to figure out what the implementations are and try to avoid them." And the rest was history. So PUP was born on trying to deal with the implementation problem for protected area management plans. And from the very outset, we had both practice and research as two of our fundamental pillars, which of course led to this book, led to many of our experiences, and are directly tied to our collaboratory. So that is kind of how we began. And I think we go into more detail in other walks about how many of the values that we shared with Pico Bonito, such as frugality, are still relevant today. So another way to look at the history, and if you haven't done it yet, is on our history page, where you could say that PUP has gone through 4 different phases, or is going through 4 different phases. Very briefly, phase 1 is when I was running the public use planning program in Honduras, close with our close partners, Pico Bonito National Park. Fito Steiner is the one right in front of me. I'm the one right behind him, in case you can't tell. And that was the very basis of it. Eventually, we started working with a big project with UNESCO the World Heritage Center, the Sustainable Tourism Program, under Art Peterson, who's a PUP member still today. And he gave us the opportunity with funding that Rare had got through UNESCO and the United Nations Foundation to work in Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, and 2 sites in Indonesia. They're all World Heritage sites. So that's where we got to test out the very first public use planning program. And this program, as I mentioned, was an attempt to try and figure out why and get around why plans so oftentimes go unimplemented. So it was a big emphasis on participatory, on public participation, on power sharing, right? So we didn't write the plans for these parks. We helped their staff do it for them. We didn't facilitate the meetings. We helped them do it for them. So helped train them and we guided them. In any event, phase 2 basically came after I left Rare. Rare did no longer wanted to deal. They moved on to other programs. So I took the public use planning program myself and eventually went to work directly with Art Peterson at the World Heritage Center. And with funding that he acquired, we ended up taking the public use planning program, or project, if you will, methodology, and applying it in a variety of different cultures and languages around the world, both natural and cultural heritage. Several pieces of it or the whole thing. So Macedonia, Montenegro, Belize, Vietnam, Portugal, Kenya. These are all places that PUP has experience in its deep history, if you will, refining a lot of these concepts of how planning can contribute to community development. Phase 3, after Art left UNESCO and after we came to realize that we really could not achieve implementation while we're at UNESCO, because UNESCO was doing everything from Paris. It was still very centralized. The money came from donors I'd never met. The sites were chosen through different political machinations. So we couldn't set up the conditions necessary for implementation to truly occur. So in 2003, PUP left UNESCO and began its journey as its own nonprofit. It was in 2016 that we became a legal nonprofit, incorporated in the state of Colorado, and recognized by the Internal Revenue Service in 2017. And it's about that time that our book, The Future Has Other Plans, came out, and capturing the lessons of all the previous years. And very recently, just added a phase 4. I think it's worthy of phase 4, which is the PUP Collaboratory. So I feel like we're really turning a major corner and we warrant yet another new phase. And I don't think I need to talk about that at this moment. So that's briefly the history. What is our mission? can't see my tab while I'm sharing, so hold on 1 second. Now, this you're probably mostly familiar with as well, but out of our 2021 strategic planning, we have the mission and the vision that we have today, at least for the moment. The vision is we envision a new era of human thriving through wider, deeper linkages between people and heritage, both natural and cultural. Now we just kind of say natural cultural with a hyphen. So you see that we're already evolving beyond this. And the mission too. We support communities in the protection and management of natural and cultural heritage through our learning network and evolving integral approaches and tools. When people ask me the mission of PUP, that's never what I say anymore. I like to say we support communities in better managing and conserving natural cultural heritage from a holistic focus. As you can see, the part about the learning network and evolving integral tools has evolved into the collaboratory. So at some point, I feel like we need to update the mission and vision a little bit. And these other things I'm not going to read because a lot of these also need updating, I think, to conform better with the emerging vision coming out of the collaboratory, the identity, value propositions, the different channels.
John, run that.
Yes.
John, run that past me. What is it you say when asked? Is about supporting communities. What was the word you used?
I say, I mean, it's not the official mission, but
No.
Executive Director. I say that we support communities in better managing and conserving natural cultural heritage from a holistic focus.
Thank you.
Brought it up to the board a couple times about potentially updating the mission, but it hasn't been seen as a priority yet. And, you know, I can understand it's about wording, but
yeah,
in any event. So as you can imagine, the revenue streams are changing in light of the collaboratory and in light of our study abroad courses. Our key partnerships will change. So the story of the present unfolding into the future, you know, that also needs updating as well. So I think this may have been one of the homework readings. So you can always check that out later if you so desire. Moving on. Obviously, I don't need to explain to those present here the importance of the collaboratory, or even need to go and look at the summary. You've all seen it. But I will just re-emphasize the point that since our founding in 2013, we've been rather opportunistic without much impact, you know, looking for almost like a consulting company, but not even a good consulting company because don't have the resources that a consulting company often has to go out and find those opportunities. So now with the collaboratory, I think we're finally have a vision for real impact and real purpose, bringing all those disparate experiences with different tools together and finally leveraging them globally. What is really important to look at, and I think one of the most valuable things that came out of the strategic planning from 2021, I don't know if you've all seen this or not, but as our overarching strategy, which I think is largely still the same and is, I think, very useful. This uses you don't have to read that. This is a kind of an animated, if you want to read it yourself or watch it yourself, what is an overarching strategy? It's a causal loop diagram, which comes from the systems thinking world. It's an important tool. So we applied it to here, looking at the different feedback loops in the impact that we could be causing. Because they're cycles, there's no real place to start. But even back in 2021, the starting point was what today would be the collaboratory. It says proven integral tools and approaches. And I can't make this bigger. I don't know if you can see it. I see you leaning forward, Liz. So that is what is the collaboratory, basically. And as the collaboratory or the toolbox gets better, you'll have more members of the PUP learning community, both within and without the organization. As we have more members, there'll be more applications of the tools that are in the toolbox in the field. That'll generate more project opportunities for PUP to participate in and accompany and generate more resources. When there's more applications and opportunities and resources, then there are more lessons that can be reaped and harvested in the field and then fed back into the collaboratory. So part of the vision, even back then, was to have a formal research and development component. I guess we would say that would be part of the collaboratory at this point. Non-PUP members too would also be participating in the application of tools, whether that's because of the free version of things that they have access to, or they're using some of these tools in any event, and then we can still take advantage of those lessons if we can find them. So through the application of these tools in the field, we would expect to have at least some of the projects be quality, and the more applications there are, the higher number of quality projects there would be, and the higher number of community heritage projects. So the higher quality and the higher number of projects, as I mentioned before, generates more lessons learned that we would then actively capture by working through some kind of protocol with those who are involved in the collaboratory, and then feed those captured lessons back into our R&D. And as our effectiveness of organizational learning increases, we'll be able to capture and take advantage of those lessons more effectively over time. So the more quality community projects we have, the greater number of benefits for communities and for heritage should result. And if that's the case, then we'll be scoring higher on improving community thriving indicators. Now, we don't actually have those indicators defined. They could be United Nations indicators, somebody else's indicators, or we could come up with them ourselves if necessary. But as those indicators as those benefits become more patent, that would increase the popularity of our approach, the collaboratory. It says integral paradigm, but I think we're really talking about the collaboratory here. And this would feed back in getting us more members and affecting more non-members, people becoming more knowledgeable about our existence. And I think those are indicators we've captured in our indicator matrix for the collaboratory that we did last year. So as there's more benefits from the community, we'll generate more advocates for this approach. Community members, practitioners, et cetera, and they also will help to increase the popularity of the collaboratory, as well as our own promotional activities, and as well as communities having better, as the benefits become more obvious, people write articles about them. So there's a variety of different factors that lead into increasing popularity, as only one of them, which is active marketing or promotion. And the second to last loop, as we have more quality projects, we'll be able to have some model projects, which I mentioned in the 2-minute introduction. And those model sites or those model projects, of course, I can't even read what this says because it's being blocked by my, oh, there it is. Will increase their influence, and that influence will increase the number of applications in the field, at least ideally, and feed back in. So, and then finally, as the popularity of the program increases, it will affect policy adoption. Even if we make no effort at all, that's just the way it works in the field. When people see things they think are successful, they tend to imitate it, even if it's not justified. So hopefully in our case, it would be justified. By increasing these policy adoptions, that would eventually lead to the increase of applications of the toolbox even more. So this is kind of a summary version of that more complex model. Not everybody wants to look at that complex series of 5 feedback loops, but essentially, and this obviously still needs to be updated a little bit too, the PUP integral toolbox, as it gets better, increases the PUP learning network. As the learning network expands and gets more active, it increases applications in the communities. As the applications of communities increase, it generates additional lessons learned that feed back into improving the collaboratory. And it also actually improves community well-being and resilience. And I suppose it should say heritage conservation too, would be a box that should be here since it's part of our mission. And then that would feed back into both the toolbox and the learning network. So even though that was done in 2021, I think that still more or less applies today. I think there's terminology that we need to update again, just like with all of our strategic documents as the collaboratory continues to mature. I don't know if I'll just take a stop there for a second if anyone has any reactions. good or bad, or other.
I mean, I think just what you're saying, really, actually, the fact that it's 2021 and you can actually see, that being applied there in terms of where you're trying to get to, I think really still works. And actually, I think there is a starting point. I think the collaboratory is the starting point,
Yeah.
because without that, you don't start to generate anything. So,
Right. No, and you're right. Every real loop in real life does start temporally somewhere, right? I mean, God did, I'm not sure God created the collaboratory with the rest in Genesis, so it had to have a different origin.
I've looked through these slides before, but it was really helpful, John, to have you talk through them. Actually, I understood it much better, so I appreciate that. That was very
Good.
helpful, and it gave me some good notes thinking about how we're pulling together the collaboratory efforts going forward.
Awesome. Yeah, that's part of why we want to have the onboarding.
Mhm.
So when the future of has other plans came out, it came out in its last chapter. It mentions a series of holistic planning principles, which are still quite rescuable, usable. The original focus was, as you probably already imagined, to transcend the problem of non-implementation. I think with the collaboratory, we're moving beyond just that. Although for those, I mean, I don't think Liz has seen it yet, but in the value proposition document, that still plays an important role because it's a really important pain point. We wrote this book to deal with that pain point in the field. And of course, that's probably not a surprise to you. We've had such conversations, Liz, about people not taking strategic planning seriously, et cetera, or misunderstanding it. We wrote the book for managers and planners who don't understand integral theory. We wrote it journalistically rather than academically, although it does have 350 references. And I still feel like it's kind of this philosophical basis. And even if it isn't, it's cool to say we have a philosophical basis as a nonprofit, right? Of that idea of integral theory, which is kind of a theory that combines all theories. I'm not going to go into that now. Another important principle is transdisciplinarity. It's much more than multidisciplinary, which is different people from different fields working together, but working from their fields. It's more than interdisciplinary, where people are still disciplinary experts, but combining their knowledge. Transdisciplinary is the next step where you're no longer talking about disciplines at all. You're looking at a much higher level of integration. And hopefully that's where we can be. Just stop this share so we can get back to my other documents. Suppose I should briefly mention, if you haven't seen, our emphasis on learning and research goes way back to the beginning. You see we have a publications page. I'm sure you might have seen on our website. We don't have a publications manager now, so we have now a time gap, but we have books, major books by PUP authors and publications by authors, since that is always an important part, the practice as well as the research and the learning. Even from the very beginning, at Rare, there was a major emphasis that I learned when I was beginning. You can see this cover here. This is the public use coordinator training course, our very first training course, which sucked. It was 40 straight days of torture, but we did a self-reflection and we were very open and we learned a lot. And the boss lauded us for doing that. And that kind of set the tone for, at least me personally, of trying to be very self-reflective and self-critical for improvement. And here's a list of different highlights of learning. And we just went through this with the foreign study program in Costa Rica. We're making a lot of changes, which is good. I'm very excited about the next version, but I think we were pretty open about the changes and about the things that needed to be changed. So that's research and self-reflection goes way back to our origin. And I hope it still remains an important principle in the collaboratory, so that the collaboratory is always developing. The other focus areas, well, public use planning, I think we briefly talked about that. It's not much here on the website, but heritage interpretation, you probably have already gathered, is an area we've worked a lot in from the very beginning. That aspect of communications with different audiences for heritage management and protection. This tool making probably now I don't know if we want to keep this section, but tool making goes right back to the very beginning days with Rare. So the collaboratory has that historically. So here's a list of different kinds of tools and things that have developed, and actually it goes back beyond 2007 if we include Rare. And of course now the study abroad in Costa Rica, this page hasn't been updated yet, but we did just get the green light on Friday from University of Montana to go ahead and develop the next course. So in your backyard, well, not the course, Liz, but the green light at least. So I don't want to go too much into these things. Again, these focus areas are also evolving a lot with the collaboratory, of course. This out of the way. The heritage interpretation development. Alrighty. So the next thing on the list, and again, jump in at any point. Because of the nature of those present, I'm not going to say much about the collaboratory. Very briefly about the study abroad. I have 2 windows open there. This is somewhat fortuitous that this has emerged, but it does seem to have an angle of connection with the collaboratory. The idea of having coursework and supporting people using tools that are in this case, perhaps the book, or at least concepts, is consistent with the collaboratory vision. Like I said, we're doing the next version in January of 2025. In a week, I have several professors from the University of Tennessee coming down to Costa Rica for 5 days. It's a recon trip. They're coming to see some of the sites and to see what some of our management capacity is, potentially offering yet a second course as well. We're also talking about, for those who may have already met Kai is a long-time professional, planning professional, Forest Service, Bureau of Land Management, and now National Park Service, who participated in the course with us. And he's helping think about what a professionals course might look like. So not directed at students, but directed at professionals. And we've given some thought to that pretty early, though. We have to figure out if we have enough bandwidth to think about that. And then we also have a condition-based zoning course that'll be online this year with the Tropical Science Center, based on a new tool we've been developing over the past several years, a new way of zoning in protected areas. Not exactly integral or holistic, but it is looking kind of outside the box, which is part of what we're always trying to do. So we definitely have courses there, and hopefully we will be able to consolidate this into a more formal course management program, which of course Liz already has expertise in. So a little bit on the membership and how it's structured. This window anymore, don't need that window anymore. So obviously you know about our board. You may have seen this document on the board. Is this little bar in your view, or I can only see it? Probably I can see it. I see somebody else.
Usually just you can see the bar with the toolbar.
Okay, so we'll introduce you to Claudia. I don't know if you all know Claudia yet. Claudia Virgen is from Chiapas, Mexico.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, Claudia. You actually, Claudia, you mostly just missed the history. So we talked a lot about Rare, and Claudia was part of that history. She was the Mexico country manager helping to develop the public use planning program during that time. So she already knows most of what we just talked about. And Claudia.
Nice to meet you.
And I'll just introduce you, Claudia, in a second, just done giving your brief introduction. Claudia is the executive director of, it's technically a nonprofit, right, Claudia?
Yeah.
But it's
it is.
Maybe you should say what it is. I'm not the right person.
Yes, it's a non-profit.
And what is its mission?
You are right. Sorry?
And what does it do?
Well, we work mainly with protected areas in Mexico, southern Mexico, mainly in Chiapas. And our focus is to work with the local people, projects related with tourism, but also other projects related with other products like cacao, cafe. So we work mainly to work with the foundations of the local enterprises to help them to be successfully in terms of financial terms, of course, and with a very clear link to conservation activities to protect the natural capital that these enterprises has to protect in order to continue working with what they do, coffee, cacao, tourism.
So Claudia, obviously, not only is she a trusted friend and colleague, shares some of that early PUP history, but also has a ton of experience working with nonprofits, tourism, tools, conservation. So I'm really excited that as Jean Knack came back, Claudia as well, other PUP people. So very briefly, Claudia, I don't think you've met anyone here. Liz Moore is one of our new board director. She's an expert in planning. She owns a company called Planning School. Peter Casebo, hailing from Scotland, is a new advisor, and he has a lot of experience in business startups, especially one like the Collaboratory. And Katie Ahern in California, she's our new secretary to the board. She's an experienced planner, interpretive planner, and so her skill set also really strongly complements what we're doing right now. So
nice to meet you all. Very pleased to meet you. Thank you.
So just from historical perspective, this document here shows the different board classes, if you will, and how they've evolved over time. This is actually an idea that Allison Ormsby originally gave us to document it this way, as well as the officers. On the second page too, there's a history of our different advisors. So, and at one point we did an analysis for gender diversity. I have to go back and do that again. So our advisors actually have been quite diverse, both gender and nationality. Our board has not been, for some reason. And I think I have a good reason for that, but that's not important yet at the moment. So just very briefly about our membership. You already know our membership is somewhere around 50 or 60. And we have a variety of different organizations as well as individuals. This is what we write down for our membership benefits. The most important one, though, is supporting a mission and niche unique in the natural heritage, I should say natural cultural heritage conservation world, to fix that. There are a number of small benefits as well, receiving some postcards. If you haven't received postcards yet, let me know, especially if you started closer to the pandemic. Costa Rica's had trouble. Our shipper is here in Costa Rica, so a lot of got hurt because a lot of countries couldn't receive stuff for a while, but that's not a problem anymore. And you get discounts and benefits, but I think most of these benefits are pretty minimal compared to number 10, and that's supporting this important mission. Studies show that that's the main reason people join nonprofits anyways, for the mission, not for the other things. Depends on the kind of nonprofit, but some of you may have seen this. Guess I can move in a little bit closer. Our org chart. We try not to have an org chart that's vertical like many organizations do. You see our board of directors is in the middle with the advisors above, the country representatives, non-board officers, Katie and John, individual members. They don't include our 17 student members, our institutional members, the contractors that we use all the time, and some organizations that we have some strategic partnerships with. So this we try to keep connected to our board packet every month. So you can always, if you're bored, watch the evolution of how this document goes. Again, I'll stop for a second if anyone has any questions. Not.
I do. I was curious, How do you want members engaging with PUP in the ideal world? I know we're moving into something with the collaboratory, but in your mind, like, how do we want them engaging with us?
Well, good. That's a kind of good segue right into the next point about action teams. We've always not had board committees. The idea was to have the concept of an action team, which ideally is composed of people from throughout the organization. So we've always tried to have a very horizontal organization, originally conceived to try to make the organization more resilient. The more it depends on a hierarchy, the more vulnerable it is to shocks, like if I get shot. And so the action teams are for that purpose. Even the board, this board org chart is to try to emphasize horizontality. When I always like to view, and I try to tell people when they become members, that they consider themselves as a stable of potential contributors, joining projects, joining action teams, to get them involved. If they decide they just want to sit there and watch and pay their annual dues, that's acceptable as well. But I'd always wanted to have kind of an action membership. And, you know, we don't have thousands and thousands of people just sitting waiting for our magazine. We're not designed for that. Maybe we will be in the future. But to some degree, most of the people on this list on the left-hand side have participated in some way, either a project. A couple of them are just watchers, but most of them have participated in something. And I think that's important for recruitment and retention. And we've seen now that PUP is switching over to more of the collaboratory model. We've lost quite a few people, but those are people who were watchers. Those are people who were mostly maybe interested in just interpretation. So the people who remain are people who are more likely to participate in some way when we call upon them.
Yeah, and when you say participate in projects, not only projects to develop, like not just projects that are developing the organization, but actual planning projects the PUP gets contracted to come in and help with, right?
Paid projects as well. Right.
Yeah, great.
Or they're advisors or directors, right? Or officers. So they have some role in that function as well. So hopefully as we move forward, we can create a culture in that sense of action members. Maybe you should call them that. I don't know. Well, this is mostly relevant for Liz. I'll just go through it very quickly for the sake of the other folks here. And actually, Katie already knows too. So I guess I'll go really, I don't know, maybe Peter and Claudia. But we use what I think is a best practice at PUP called the board agreement document, warmly known as the BAD. And this is a social contract that explains the obligations of the board director to PUP and also the obligations of PUP to the board director. So, you know, what do board directors have responsibilities that are fiscal, governance, program oversight, ambassadorship, right? And then this is the statement of agreement. They sign this once a year to remind them, and they also put their pledge amount here as a board director. Our boards have been pretty bad at fundraising, and that's partly my fault and partly because we're just young and it's harder to leverage board members who are good at that. But in any event, and here's just an estimate, a rough estimate of a time commitment for board members. So they have a better idea before joining what it's all about. I guess I jumped over the action teams mostly because the concept is largely not functioning at the moment. We've kind of realized to have a functional action team, you need to have a coordinator. So our most urgent need would be the communications action team. We have had a financial action team, which by default is now Jean because we have a treasurer. The ITAT, which is kind of turned into the collaboratory. I don't know, can't call that a collaboratory action team, or otherwise you would have two cats. But that's not a major issue right now. We have a Latin American interpretation action team, which is Antonieta and Marisol, working on different projects. But it would be nice to try to mobilize another one if we could find one person for the communications action team. Or we would love to have a membership action team, but I don't think it's hard to do that with volunteers. I think we're going to need a paid position at some point to manage membership, to kind of take that off my shoulder at some point. So a couple ideas about board vision. We know that there's mutual responsibility as defined in the board agreement document, the social contract. It's not a legally binding document. Oh, it is important to remember for Liz and for anybody who becomes on the board in the future that you are the legal owners of the corporation. I mean, you literally own this corporation in a legal sense. And the board is responsible for the governance and the revenue. So when we have revenue downfalls, in theory, I mean, obviously the executive director has an important role to play in that, but the buck doesn't stop with me legally. It stops with the board. Now, because I'm the founder, we still suffer the founder effect. And if I do get shot in the head, then I don't know, that doesn't bode well for the organization in the future. But it's a good test of resilience, right? If I get shot and PUP continues, then I know I finally achieved my goal of making it a resilient organization. I may not know in this life, but I may know in another life. We don't have any paid development staff, which means the board is really responsible for fundraising and doing some work. It's a working board, which is not a term we've come up with, typical of early version or younger nonprofits. So, more mature organizations, the boards just make decisions. In our case, board members are expected to actually help set up systems, not run the systems, because that would be inappropriate for a board generally, but to help set up those systems, find the resources for those systems. And we'll serve on an action team. That's what we expect every board member to serve on, an action team. And we have that right now. We only have 4 board members, but 3 of them are on the collaboratory, and one of them is the financial action team. And Jean has done wonders in getting us going in QuickBooks and professionalizing our financial management. So that's been pretty good. In this board president job description, it kind of talks about what we look for in the culture of a board. I'm not going to read this now because of time purposes. This may have been in the homework. If not, I can send it, but we don't currently have a board president anyway. It's sort of Shanti and myself sharing those responsibilities, but nobody actually heading it. I suppose that's more of an internal board discussion than an onboarding discussion right now. So also board directors are considered volunteer non-experts in how to run NGOs. So we don't generally hire directors because they're NGO experts. Shanti does actually have quite a bit of experience in managing boards. So that's good. Merrick has been on an NGO most of his career. I dare say Liz probably has significant experience for profit and nonprofit management as well. And Jean, of course, as an executive director for many years, has run her own board. So we're good in that term in terms of semi-expertise on our board, even though it's not something we normally recruit for. Another important point is that we need high standards for success. Oftentimes, and we've seen it on our board too, people think, well, I'm volunteering my time. I don't have to give money. I don't have to show up for every meeting because I'm volunteering my time. And those are all attitudes of low performance, and they bring the organization down. We've eliminated some board directors for that reason, because I think if some directors are bringing us down, then they bring the whole thing down.
A bit harsh, John, if you're eliminating them.
What's that? Well, it's usually a long process to eliminate.
Be careful, Liz.
No, I would say even though this is a very small board, we have the most dynamic board and most mission-oriented board we've ever had, since all 4 are contributing actively towards a north direction, heading towards the Polaris of our future, you might say. But it is important that as new people are contemplating becoming board members, they realize that the difference between low and high performing boards and coming on and just wanting to put it on your resume, or maybe just making a donation and occasionally coming to meetings is a formula for failure. These aren't even my ideas. It's just my studying of boards. So there is some discussion between meetings, as Liz well knows, monthly board meetings, mandatory attendance. And ideally there'll be monthly action team meetings, but basically it's just the collaboratory, and we just eliminated monthly meetings at the last meeting in the name of efficiency. So that may not even be an expectation in the future as we move to Asana and a project-based approach. And of course, board members are expected to make a financial contributions. And there's one consultant whose course I took on board development a few years back, and he made a really good point. He said, if the owners of the organization are not willing to invest in their own organization, put money in their, why should anyone else? It's a pretty important point. It's not worth your money. And I'm not saying there's a particular amount that we're expecting of any board member. And we know some board members don't have a lot of money. We've never recruited millionaires. Not yet. We're still waiting for our first millionaire. But the intention there and the spirit is as much important as the amount. Our target is 7. And we've never made it to 7. We're now back down at 4. So we still are in need of a couple more, hopefully, board members this year. Liz, I do have hopefully the final design draft of the announcement. I'll just send it to the board one more time, check it out, and then we can start to publish it widely on social media. So, and the rest of you will see that as well. We'll send it to the entire membership to share on social media so you can see how we're trying to recruit. Katie, are you still there?
Yep, I'm still here.
Okay. The next part is normally I like to go over very briefly the board meeting cycle and agenda that the secretary does. We don't always have a secretary with us. I don't know if you could briefly talk about, really briefly, because everybody here more or less already knows the board packet, the minutes, just the times that are involved, like when those get sent out and stuff.
Or
Putting you on the spot.
I think I'm still kind of learning my way as well. My understanding is that primarily John works on a board packet and that gets sent out with the meeting invite. And there's a board meeting the first Wednesday of every, hopefully the first Wednesday of every month. This year, there's been some challenges, I think, with people's schedules. So it's still, I think, syncing up to hopefully have that ongoing schedule.
Right, and if that meeting doesn't happen because we don't have quorum, then it flips over to 1 week later. If that doesn't happen, then we cancel it for that meeting. We request all board directors, and Liz already knows this, to confirm 24 hours in advance so that we can determine quorum. And it's pretty uncool to 1 hour before the meeting cancel it when other people have made space for it in their schedules. So we hope most board directors will tell us in advance. And please don't put maybe in your confirmation because that doesn't tell us anything. But I can't turn the maybe option off with Wild Apricot. Yes, go ahead.
Or sorry, no, I had a question kind of going back to a question that Liz had asked earlier, if that's okay.
Please.
On that note, when Liz was asking about really, it's like that goal for, active members and membership participation in the collaboratory, I think I'm still a little bit not totally clear of it, is the goal building out this toolkit and that it's almost like a collection of, resources that members have maybe developed within their own projects that they're working on, like outside of membership with PUP. And it's like that sense of it's a database of resources for anyone within cultural and natural heritage to be able to draw upon, or a little bit of what I'm not quite sure if I was catching correctly, of that sense of it's like members in PUP are actually working on PUP identified projects. And that sense of it's like how I don't quite understand, or where, if that's if that's part of the organizational model, I'm not totally clear where is PUP identifying the projects to go after that then members are participating in. Maybe I didn't quite follow correctly, kind of that sense of, what it means to be an active member, and is it this toolkit that's being built out, or you're also actually envisioning members to be uniting on future projects?
That's a lot of questions, actually. But you actually reminded me of a point that I forgot to make. The original reason why we chose a membership structure was because we're trying this holistic approach, we're going against the conventional thinking in the field. We're going against the establishment. And when we were with UNESCO, UNESCO opened doors for us, gave us opportunities to expose people to a more participatory, more power sharing approach. When we left UNESCO, we didn't have UNESCO to open doors. So how do we open doors ourselves when we're pursuing a paradigm that's not conventionally accepted or even understood? So we figured, well, if we're a membership organization, we speak with a louder voice. And people will pay more attention. And I've actually found that with our membership, even with just 60 to 70 members, and some of the members quite well known, people like, okay, this PUP has this idea, pay attention to what they're saying and maybe new opportunities. So that was the original idea, but also membership ended up being our principal source of our income stream, right? It's our membership dues covers our operating costs because we don't have anybody salaried. People only get paid if they're involved in a paid project, with the exception of a few contractors. We do have a designer and a writer who we do pay, and we hope to hire a business manager in the very near future to work a few hours a week on things that business managers do. So having said that, that was our initial interest in having a membership. Most members are people I know. Unfortunately, I'm the recruiter and not many other people do much recruiting of members. And a few times people join who I don't know and like, wow, that's cool. You come. Because we're small numbers and because the idea was to have a horizontal organization and it's a volunteer organization, it makes sense. And I know people that there was a fairly high level of participation among members in different functions, whether it's a board director, an advisor, or they join. A few people have joined because they saw the possibility of being paid and being involved in a project, and indeed they have. When we've had projects in Colombia or Peru, I try hard to create opportunities for our members to become involved and get paid, and then they feel like, wow, I'm getting a big benefit from being a PUP member. Other members join to volunteer and help develop the organization, as Liz was mentioning as well. And some people join because they like the idea or they like me and they just pay and then don't do anything else. So I think to the degree possible, being a volunteer organization, the more we can have our members contributing time, whether it's paid time or volunteer time, the more we can do as an organization. But after having done this for now 10 years, there's limits to what you can ask volunteers to do, right? And I suffer those limits, high turnover in some areas and people not taking their responsibilities seriously and things like that. So I don't know if I answered your question, Katie. The toolkit or the collaboratory, as we move forward, as we envision it more as a business, I don't think it's going to depend highly on volunteers, except maybe at the leadership level. And Peter may have some, well, I don't think you ever depended much on volunteers either for mind tools.
No, not a lot.
So, but because of our nature, we're starting out with a lot of volunteer time. And there'll be roles for people who develop tools, and paid roles and volunteer roles, I think, within the collaboratory, but that's not an expectation of members. We don't know if everybody who's a member of PUP will be a member of the collaboratory or not. We haven't worked that out, or are those two different pools?
Can I take a shot of a little bit of a summary and see if it's
please.
maybe helpful too for Katie and but I think what I'm understanding is that like PUP is meant to be a place for people who believe in a holistic approach to managing and conserving natural and cultural heritage places. So fundamentally, they believe that there's a different way to approach managing and conserving, and that they want to sort of join forces for the greater good, right? And so it's a place to bring people who are looking for a different approach to the way to take care of these places. And in that, like, it's not just a different way to do planning, but actually PUP has reimagined how the organization might be, and that it's not a traditional service-based nonprofit where we're a nonprofit, we're a business, and we provide these services and these tools, but it's meant to be more of a collaborative approach where the members actually help either bring opportunities for planning projects, opportunities for teaching, open doors, get involved, maybe participate, but that they are, like, maybe in oversimplified ways, they're like self-selecting in as not employees, but it's, again, oversimplifying it just for understanding what we see in other realms. Like, members are sort of part of our team. And that's the goal, is that they're part of the team and they have ways that they can either participate actively, where they're like opening doors or on a project team, or adding to the toolkit, or using the toolkit and reporting back about how that went so that we can make adjustments. But it's just sort of a different model. Did I get anything wrong?
No, I think that is good. You know, and this is why we've always had the board meetings open to any member can come. I don't advertise as much just because I don't have time often, but that's always been a kind of principle, and
Yeah.
kind of that horizontal nature.
Yeah.
We even
Yeah.
have thought about having like kind of regional groups to, again, to increase the resilience of the organization, but that requires more cultivation than I can do at the moment. But I think that's a good description, and maybe we should work on some of our literature, about our membership literature, to capture that, because we don't offer many services to members. But that desire to serve that larger mission. Katie,
Katie, is that helpful?
Yeah, no, thank you both. Yeah, I guess this onboarding is helpful because I think it is, in some ways I think I'm still, as a member, it's like, I don't think I'm still totally clear on what, kind of in that, even as you're saying right now, and I understand part of it maybe is it's like this new phase that's ahead. But that sense of how is that being cultivated for members right now? That's part of this kind of next phase that it's in development. But thank you both for sharing your thoughts.
right? We need to give more body to that concept that Liz articulated, but kind of limited. Moving on quickly, advisors. Very briefly, I was going to show you the bylaws, but you can look at the bylaws. We're not going to go through them in this meeting. Advisors are not legally bound to the organization like directors are. They're not financially responsible. Basically, we want them to be there when we need them. Sometimes, like in the case of Peter and Claudia Mansour, who couldn't make it, they're brought on for a very specific purpose, a very specific project, in this case, the collaboratory. Other advisors just kind of float around. We've had in the past coordinator and advisor who kind of coordinated and had by semi-annual meetings. We used to ask them to do a webinar or write an article for our newsletter. But again, we would need a person to be active to do that, to mobilize the advisors a little bit more. I should mention Jay McGaffigan, our technology advisor. He's also for the collaboratory. So, and there's sometimes directors move back to advisors as part of their retirement or pulling away from director responsibilities. We have 3 advisors emeriti, Sam Ham, Steve McCool, Allison Ormsby, who are all still available for consulting, but they're not as much on our mailing lists, and they're not expected to do anything except be there if we ask for their help. So I think that we could probably get more out of advisors. Well, not more, like not from Peter, or some of them are very active. If we had more organization, I think a coordinator for it. We've also always had really good diversity, cultural diversity, gender diversity on our advisors. We have Mexican, Croatian, recently had a Canadian, and we have a Scot too, among others. So, and I think the main challenge for having that diversity on the board, and we may have discussed this in the past, but the expectations of working on an American board are very different than boards in other parts of the world. Very different. I mean, I can't speak for the UK, but certainly in developing countries, you know, I've had this discussion with Claudia, right? People just, it's been a challenge to retain people from other countries on our board because the idea of a working board and kind of the American legal context and the philanthropic context that is the United States is very different. So that's been a challenge, which is why we have mostly Americans, all Americans right now. In terms of finance, as we get towards the end here, I'll just share screen briefly. The best place to quickly see finance is in our report, a finance report every year. If you aren't already certain, we have very small numbers. Being a volunteer organization, our numbers are going up between 2021, 2022, and another jump because of our foreign study program. Not a lot of money, but we generated $7,800 with the pilot course with the University of Montana, which in terms of our operating expenses is a pretty huge boost. It's not great for hiring people. Step in the right direction. As you still can see, if our income, our membership dues is one of the largest project income, our consistent income. And then of course we do have projects and they go up and down. Obviously project income goes up and down, and most of the project income just goes off to the people we hire, PUP members or non-PUP members who execute those projects. So it doesn't leave a lot left over. As you can see, last 2022, we had a 27,000 income, and was our net profit was 5,500. So in any event, hopefully those numbers will gradually continually move up. They need to for the collaboratory. That'll be a big step, hopefully. But what's the point here? Point here is that we're a volunteer organization. And we have very low overhead because we're a virtual organization. You know, the rent that we pay is virtual, right? And most of our expenses are subscriptions to different virtual functions, communication functions, largely. Communication channels, very briefly, in order of formality from most to least. I don't think Liz has experienced this yet, but we do have an e-voting function. And we do follow some best practices because it is a secured password. You know, we use the poll function on Wild Apricot. We have used it in the past. The idea is when we want to vote on things that don't require much discussion, although the e-voting does have a forum attached to it, so discussion is possible. And then after that, email with our listservs are considered formal communications. Things that's sent through there are formal. We haven't started with Asana yet, but once we start working with our project management, I would expect that the communications there are considered formal, I guess. I'm not sure if that's the right word or not. Thereafter, we do have a WhatsApp group. Some of you are on it and some of you are not. That is not formal. It is not official. We have board members who are not using WhatsApp, or at least not sharing that they use WhatsApp. We do have the ability to create email, both email accounts and email forwarding addresses. Katie has an email account as the secretary, for example. Jean has a forwarding address as the treasurer. I have both. Actually, I've got about 5 forwarding addresses because I'm so important. Anyway, that's it pretty much for communications. So we also have, I suppose, we have a Facebook page, a LinkedIn page, a YouTube channel, a website, and we haven't, we have our PUP dates, which are our press releases. And in theory, we have PUP Notes, our newsletter, but we haven't had a newsletter editor for a while. So that's been largely dysfunctional for the moment. And of course, our annual reports and our financial reports. wanted to give recognition to our consultant staff, although they're not all consultants. Our admin, we don't call them staff because they're not technically staff, but Olivia Parrott is our webmaster, and she started out as being paid for that and just decided to go volunteer. So she, all the updates to our website that she does are volunteer. Eric Vargas, and she's a member, a paying member. Eric Vargas is our shipping manager here. He's not a member, he was a member, and we pay him to ship out to the membership stuff. Alejandra Zuniga, who Peter now knows, is not a member, but she's a writer, a professional writer, bilingual in English and Spanish. So she's really good to help do both functions for us. So those are, and our designer never sent me his information, but I have a Costa Rican designer who does a lot of the design work that you've seen. One other thing I wanted to point out, if you haven't seen it, is this document called the PUP Consortium Project Matrix. Hopefully you've all seen it by now. I update it every 2 or 3 months to give you basically an update on what PUP's doing. And you can see it goes back to 2013. So it's a history of everything PUP has done. The projects that you'll see here are both paid projects and internal development projects. They're just initiatives of one kind or another. They're color-coded. Yellow means it's happening. Red means it's a developing idea or will start soon. Green is it's completed. Purple is the possibility, and black means it's no longer a possibility. It kind of dropped, like a project that we never got funded for or something like that. The red letters mean these are changes since the last version. So you kind of know where to look quickly if you want to see changes. Where is the region? Who's paying for it? Any financial income that we're projecting because of it? Who's the project lead, support, and the notes. So this is a good way to quickly, so I just added the Asana project management. It's red, we haven't actually bought the account yet. Board recruitment is ongoing, so it's yellow. We just completed the foreign study course in Costa Rica, so it's green. So we have a couple other courses possibilities, so they're purple. And the thing with the Massachusetts Department of Conservation didn't happen, or at least not yet, so that's black. So this is, I think, a good way to summarize what's going on at all times. The last thing I wanted to show, I know we're a little over, so that's why I think this is definitely the last thing, was a brief, very brief tour of what our file server is. So this is a publicly accessible page. There's 3 buttons here. If you're not a member of PUP, you click on this and you can access our public portion of our file server. Anybody can go. If you're a member, you can click on this and it's password controlled. If you're signed into Wild Apricot, you'll be able to go there. And then there's the PUP leadership only. This all brings you to the Google Drive. They'll take a step back. So different people have different levels of access. There's the leadership folder, the finance, the members only, the general public, programs and projects, PUP collaboratory, website, action teams. So, I mean, those people who need to know different parts, like Katie has access to this. I think Jean does, or strategic documents, stuff related to Colorado, advisor related, board related, contracts, et cetera, et cetera. And as you might expect under the finance section, all kinds of finance, tax forms, treasury reports, W-9, what you would expect in a finance folder. I think that's Jean, Shanti, and I have access to that. Shanti as vice president. And then the PUP collaboratory, for most of you who are involved, you already know there's a variety of stuff here in the PUP collaboratory. So that's basically that. At this point, I think I would ask folks if they have any questions that I didn't cover that you would like to be covered. You know, you've already asked some questions along the way. I certainly want to give you a chance. And I also would like to ask you for suggestions on how to improve this onboarding. I ask that every time I do it. There already were suggestions to cut it down to an hour and have more homework readings. so to speak. So those are two changes we've already implemented, and well, we're an hour and 15 minutes now, so I haven't completely made an hour yet, but comments, questions about the onboarding or about anything related to PUP?
I do have questions, but I want to give everybody else a chance in case somebody's in a hurry to leave, since we're a little over. If anybody, I can take a little time. So if anybody else needs to say something first, I'll wait.
Thank you for that.
I do need to go, so, but thank you. That was actually really useful, John. I know, you know, I've been working with you for quite a few months now. But just getting the overview, actually, it put a number of things in place for me that perhaps weren't there, but in a good way. So, and I think you answered most of my questions. I had the questions like how was it funded, number of members, et cetera, et cetera. So I've got a lot of stuff there that was really useful. So thank you.
Great. Well, thanks for coming, Peter,
Yeah,
twice.
sorry, I do have to back, but nice to see
Bye,
everybody.
Peter.
Bye
Thanks
bye.
for being here.
Good night. All right.
Katie or Claudia, do either of you have anything you want to jump ahead since?
No,
Alright.
kind of just
No.
echoing Peter. I've got a couple more minutes, but then I'm gonna have to pop off. But yeah, thank you, John.
Claudia, thoughts?
Well, I think I was trying to follow all the commentaries. I didn't have questions right now. I passed through all the files in some point very generally
Good, good.
in several times. So now for me it's more clear what is in each folder. So I think I'm fine right now. Thank you.
Well, thanks for coming, Claudia. Appreciate that. Always good to see
Yeah,
you.
this was super helpful, John. Thanks. Couple of questions. I'd love to hear how you like is PUP in your mind a community of practice, or is it like different than a community of practice?
It's not a community of practice, at least not for most
Okay.
members. I mean, I don't think we follow any of the models. There is a really interesting paper that we've used that has done a study of networks and categorizes them into 3 different categories based on their function. And then what are the different structural needs for those? Which has always been useful for me.
I'd love to see that if you know where to find it and send it over.
Yeah, it's in the collaboratory workshop, but I mean, in that work somewhere, but I can look it up and send it to you.
That'd be so helpful. Thank you.
So we're not really a network in any of those senses of either just one-way information or learning. I mean, we're not the formal academic trying to generate knowledge based on research questions. I think the collaboratory can become certain aspects of that. Like I said, the Lessons Learned Center as a model, which we did cover in the book, the Wildland Fire Lessons Learned Center. And the founder of that was a member of PUP. I don't think we got to his vision fast enough, but we will be, I think we can be part of that. We can do some of that function too, to help improve, well, they help improve the wildlands fire community with a variety of different things. Real-time incident reporting, like if I'm in the field and there's a fire and I learn something, I can just put it in on the forum, right? Or there's actually publications, there's courses, there's blogs, there's a variety of different ways to help the community learn from experiences with climate change. And I think we can do that too for heritage management, but we're not there yet. Ooh, one of my plants just fell off.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, already I'm thinking like as a board member, how can I help other people understand what we're about so that we have more membership, have more interest. So I do think it would be helpful at some point for us to be, I would be even curious to kind of do a compare and contrast of the organizational structure. Be like, this is maybe what we're used to seeing. This is what we're creating, so that people can kind of get a sense. Because I think that that'll also call in the right people, because I do believe that there are people who are interested in doing things in a different way and interested in participating as a member in an organization that has a mission that they care about, but doing it with an organization that is approaching it in a different way than what we're used to. And I think it's just a matter of finding the way to communicate that so that people can find us, so that we can kind of increase membership and interest. And I think that that'll be important. An important piece of the collaboratory and part of the work of the collaboratory efforts has to be the communication piece. So I know that there's a need for the communications team to come back up online, and I think the collaboratory is going to demand that. And so it'll be part of the work that we do, is to figure out, you know, how do
Collaboratory may
we.
very well have its own communications operation,
Yeah,
independent,
yeah, totally.
organization wide. But
Mhm.
that's always that's a future debate, is how different PUP is from the collaboratory. You know, is it just
Yeah, for sure.
or is it the same thing with two different names?
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
good point.
Yeah, I'm curious too, like, as we don't have to get into the weeds on this, but as part of that compare contrast approach, for understanding, to kind of understand how, like, name the ways that PUP is already different than an organization like NAI, National Association for Interpretation. How are we already different? What's similar? And then using that understanding as we build the collaboratory too. You know, it can be helpful. Like, part of what I do is find other organizations or businesses that do similar work to me. And it's, we call it our inspirators, like the people that inspire us instead of competitors. It's our inspirators, those who inspire us. But it's helpful to kind of like look at, like, okay, here's their model, here's their services, here's what they do, their mission, all of and go, how are we the same and how are we different? It helps us understand how to communicate and how to find the people that are our people. So doing some activities like that might be helpful too.
Yeah, part of that's in the Canvas process, right? For the defining value propositions that make us different from other people, other organizations, their services, but certainly not to the degree that you're mentioning, right? Benchmarking using a conventional term, inspirators.
Yeah, Liz, I like that sense of it. Well, and it's like finding your unique niche. I think that's the thing that like, to your comment too, if it's like what makes PUP or what makes the collaboratory, or are they both the same thing? Kind of that unique niche. I do get this understanding, and John, it's one of the things that was first exciting to me, like when we first chatted, was just like on a philosophical way. You know, it was like, I feel like it was a philosophical conversation about planning and about holistic planning. And it was like, I enjoy talking with this guy. And this is like, I share an approach where it's like, okay, how is planning, yeah, it's like, what is a different way of looking at planning? I think what I'm now trying to understand though, and I think Liz is a little bit of what you're hinting at, like as a member of NAI, I understand as a member, like what I'm getting out of that organization, you know, and it's like, it's clear to me as a member, it's kind of the resources that I can find there, the community that I can find within the listserv. I feel like, yes, like philosophy wise, there may be differences, but it's like, it's clear to me as a member what I can access and what I'm gaining out of my membership. That's what I think, almost even before communication, it's like, what is for member, like even before it's figured out how, or maybe, I mean, it's alongside of that communication piece, but like, what I feel like there is a big ask of like, members are going to be active, but yet I think also from a business perspective, what are you providing to members? You know, it's like you're requesting them to be active, but yet what's the offer to them too? You know, that's where I think that'll be helpful to better define, and then to be able to communicate, and then to Liz, as you're saying, to then target, okay, how are we increasing membership and pulling in more of that community off of that seed of, it's like, it's like-minded people, it's your people that kind of share this belief, but yet what are you doing and what are they getting out of it? Like that I feel like will be great to better understand.
Maybe it is just that activity, that joining us in the mission, because all of our other more tangible benefits are pretty small. You know, a discount on a course or getting an announcement about something that happens before the public does, and the directory, the membership directory. You would think actually the membership directory would be an important, but I don't get the feeling that a lot of people make contacts through our membership directory, even though it's available with a variety of different kinds of members. So certainly the NAI like benefits are not things that we offer, but maybe we need to invest in some more of those benefits aside from the postcards. Yeah, but you're right. If it's not clear what that is, that's really a key to retaining and recruiting new people. And that
Yeah.
collaboratory kind of, or the collaborative, we're all in this together for the mission way of framing it, I really like. I think that is what has been behind us. We join together and we make a louder voice, right? Against the, not against, but to open doors. That's not in the literature anywhere. That kind of, we're all joining together, our voices together, and trying to change the paradigm in the field. Maybe it should be.
Yeah, I think it's an important aspect that is different about PUP. And so being really clear about that, I think would be important for people to understand.
Yeah.
Thanks all so much. I'm sorry, I've got to run, but John, thank you again for leading us through. This was really helpful, and was for some of the questions that you were asking it to kind of help. And I know too, it's like that's part of the work that you're doing right now is to keep over these next 90 days to kind of keep digging. So
Yes.
I'll see you guys
Thanks,
soon.
Katie.
All right.
Thanks, Katie.
Nice to meet
Oh,
you.
and nice to meet you, Claudia. Yes. Have a
Bye.
nice day. Bye.
I have to leave also, so nice to meet you. It was a pleasure to be here. And I was thinking a little bit about the last question about what we receive as part of PUP. And I think I agree with that about we need to communicate very clearly what are the benefits. But for example, for me, one of the benefit to be here is to learn and to connect this learning to the practice. So maybe the benefits can be very tangible, but maybe can be things like the things that are in my own interest. I know that if I participate in this collaboratory tool or all the things related with the tools, is something that I am really interested because I want to see the difference in planning in the way that we can approach interpretation related with protected areas and how we can better manage the conservation of these areas and how we can involve local people in the way that they really feel part of it, part of the planification plan of all the things that we want to prove, because at the end of the day we have this hypothesis, so we want to prove it.
Yep.
So that is one of my main interests to be here, to prove it that this can be a different way to do the things and it can work. So I think in the way that we can show the kind of benefits that we can share or we can bring to the pool, to new people or to the people that we are already here, is going to be the way that everything is going to flow more clearly.
Yeah, I like the way you put
I
that.
don't know if it can help or not, but I want to share my.
I can see even making invitation to the members, right? Help us prove this hypothesis that a more holistic approach is effective. Rapidly changing world. I like that. Thanks.
Yeah, I think I'm very pragmatic in some point. So I really want to see things happening. And once it's happening, the things are happening, we can see what works or what don't. So as soon as we can start doing that, as soon as I think we can figure out what of all these ideas are philosophy or the things that we were discussing here are really real in the world, in the real world. For example, in Latin America, with all the challenges that we have here, no?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Good.
One, just
Okay.
to like throw out, build on what you're saying, Claudia, and throw out a concept as a as a informal brainstorm. Like one potential way to offer a benefit to members might be something like once a month there's a 30-minute conversation where it's open to membership. They can join live or get the recording, get access to the recording. And John, like maybe someone like me could facilitate a conversation between you and one of the members who's done this kind of planning and just facilitate people. It doesn't take any prep. It's just a conversation. So it's a low lift, and it's a conversation, and like the 30-minute conversation where people are sharing their experiences is available to members and even the general public, so people can start to see PUP. And then after the 30-minute conversation, there's a 30-minute Q&A that's private, only for members. So if you attend live as a member, you can hang out and ask questions to the people that are sharing their stories. So it's an added benefit as a member that you get access to. And then it doubles, so that you've got some material you can share publicly online to attract people to the organization. You've got a benefit of doing exactly what Claudia is talking about. Like, let's hear how people are using this and proving that it works so that I can take those lessons learned and apply it. And we know that people are quicker to access a video at this point in time than they are to read. And so wherever we can, insert video is easier, and it's a relatively low amount of work. Anyway, that's just an idea of how we can create more membership benefit to exactly what, Claudia, you're talking about.
Yeah, that sounds great.
To an idea, we wanted to have webinars more common by different members and advisors. Never quite had a webinar advisor. Coordinator. This does sound like a lower bar to shoot for. Still sounds like we could use a coordinator, just line up different members. I don't know if we're talking about them giving a presentation of a case study and then the private 30 minutes. You're talking more of a conversation.
Yeah, I'm
It's even a
thinking,
lower bar
and it
still.
could evolve, but I was just thinking, what's the easiest workload?
Yeah.
And usually it's just a conversation. And so identifying someone who's used, an integral approach to planning or conservation, and I think, John, that's tapping into your experience and knowing the members, be like, oh, so-and-so did a interesting project. There's, easy for us to ask, questions and have a conversation for 30 minutes. So it doesn't require anybody to create a presentation. They don't have to come up with talking points. It's more informal than that. I think that where we can make it easy, especially within basically an all volunteer organization, where we can simplify for ourselves and the people that we bring in. And then maybe there is occasionally more of a webinar where someone does have a presentation to offer, but I'm thinking more of chats. Like, I love the PUP date term. Like, maybe there can be a version of PUP date that is like an informal chat that we leverage both as a benefit to our members and as public awareness.
I could certainly see putting together a list of folks who could contribute different assets. And nobody's going to have the complete picture because we don't have that. It's a hypothesis, as Claudia said. Both people who are inside and outside the organizations to talk about. Could do that.
And I think even just being able to hear people talk about their approach, like John, even interviewing you a few times, like if there were 4 times a year where I interviewed you with our membership, and just let you speak about your experience, the way you think about things. It can be a conversation. People can ask questions. Like, there's value in I feel value when I get to be with people that I can learn from and just hear them speak and hear them respond to questions. I think a lot of people will take away practical tools, but also just different ways of thinking. And it's a good way to connect with folks.
I could imagine you maybe modeling one and then maybe us finding a journalist to actually do the, pay them $30 or $40 a month to do it, with the people, to lead the conversation, facilitate it, not to recruit. I could see that being affordable.
Even to present things that didn't work at all. For example, I was thinking about these TED Talks that are happening around the world, focusing on entrepreneurs that present every month or every some period of time, those examples of initiatives that didn't work, and they share why. That is also a way to learn about, if we can say, failures. So they share very openly what was the expectation, what was the hypothesis, how they envisioned to implement whatever they were thinking about it, and then why that didn't result, and what because that happened a few months or years ago, they have now the perspective to say, okay, that didn't work because this, and this. I think also that is a way to learn, of course, focusing on the kind of experiences of planification that we have a lot of examples. I think of things that didn't work because that's the one of the reasons because PUP is now here, because we saw through the years those things that didn't work. So I think that also could be another kind of approach.
I love that so much.
Yeah, that's Steve McCool, right? Because at the end of his 30-year career, it's usually when people have their feet dug into the soil with their approaches. And he looked back over 30 years and said, a lot of stuff doesn't work. Let's write a book about a different way. So he would be a good one for that. And having at least 2 a year that are in Spanish too, right? Would be really important.
Yes. I really need to leave right now.
Yeah, no, I
so,
think this is good. I can write up a couple and I'll share them with just a kind of a concept with summarizing what you did and maybe putting some names down of people.
Okay. So I'm nice to meet you. I will be
nice
waiting for next meetings and things that we have to do. I will be in touch with you, John, just to be sure that I am on the record. I'm keeping my task.
All right, we've reconceptualized how we're going to work together for the collaboratory. So you'll be hearing about that soon.
Okay.
I think you'll like it better because it doesn't involve monthly.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks, Claudia. Bye.
Hasta luego. How do we clone you, Liz?
Yeah, what's that?
How do we clone you? Because you like several times.
Yeah, no,
let
I
me
think
stop the recording here.